Live from the 22 News Broadcast Center, your local election headquarters. This is a debate for the Worcester, Hampden, Hampshire, and Middlesex district seat. Here's Rich Teddemer.
Good afternoon and welcome to a special Your Election Headquarters presentation right here on 22 News. Today we're hosting a debate among the candidates running to represent the Worcester, Hampden, Hampshire, and Middlesex Senate District. That district includes much of western Worcester County as well as 5 towns in eastern Hampden County, the town of Ware in Hampshire County, and the town of Ashby in Middlesex County. And joining us today are incumbent state senator Anne Gobi, she's a Democrat, and her Republican challenger Stephen Hall. Welcome both of you. Thank you for joining for our debate today. We begin with opening statements, and each candidate will now have a minute, and by virtue of a coin toss for the first opening statement, actually, Senator Gobi, you go first.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Rich, and thanks, Channel 22, for having me. Good afternoon to everyone tuning in. I'm Anne Gobi. I am the current state senator, and it's been an absolute privilege and honor to be state senator for these 28 towns. You know, it's a very diverse area. It's towns with people that have a fierce sense of independence, and I can tell you that no one is ever shy to let me know how they feel on a particular issue. It's a great, great area with lots of businesses, lots of open space, and a lot of potential. I've had an opportunity to work on a number of initiatives, especially this past Senate session, and I'm looking forward to working even harder in the next session coming up. So thank you again for tuning in. I'm looking forward to the debate today.
Stephen Hall, your opening statement, please.
Well, thank you to TV 22, to Senator Anne Gobi for her service to the district, and thank you to all of you who are watching today. I've been a machinist, an inventor, a small business owner, a volunteer firefighter, and I now serve as a nursing home administrator. But more importantly, I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 38 years, and I'm so proud of my family, my 2 children, and my 5 grandchildren. Over the years, I've fallen in love with service to people, and I still have that passion today. I chose to enter this race because I'm concerned over the state of healthcare and education, over the condition of our roads, over our high taxes, and a senator who is seemingly more concerned over the welfare of illegal immigrants than of our citizens of this great Commonwealth in this district. I look forward to our debate today.
And that's where we are right here, our question and answer section of this debate. I'll ask the question, and each candidate gets 1 minute for a response to each question. We've determined the order of the questions by a coin toss, and Steve Hall, you'll go first. You get the first question. The Worcester, Hampden, Hampshire, and Middlesex district, one of the largest Senate districts in the state geographically, straddles the line between central and western Massachusetts and running from the Connecticut state line to the New Hampshire state line. If elected as a senator, how do you effectively address the concerns of people living in 28 different communities?
Well, thank you. Very, very good question. It really comes down to getting out to the people. I've spent over the last year and a half, I've been out to all 28 towns, and I met with, at this point, about 7,600 different homes, as well as estimated 24,000 people. And it really comes down to knowing what people are concerned about, really knowing about their struggles, and really knowing and being available to those folks. So I think it's really about making sure that once elected, I'm still available to those folks, and I plan on traveling to those towns as well. So it certainly shouldn't be a problem, and I look forward to meeting with everyone certainly after I'm elected.
Senator Gobi, your answer to that question.
Sure, absolutely. If you took a look at the odometer on my car, I'm up to about 223,000 miles, I think, as of today. I put on about 35,000 miles average in a year, and that's because I do travel. I go to hundreds of events, hundreds of meetings a year to meet with people. I give out my cell phone number. I can give it out now, 508-981-5655. People are not afraid to call. I meet with people at their homes, and that's what it's about. It is being available and being ready to talk, even if I'm doing my grocery shopping, if I'm down at the transfer station, if the few times I get to have a night out with my husband, you're always on. It's a vocation, not just a job.
Okay, there's been a major push over the last few years for an east-west rail link connecting Springfield and Boston, and possibly extending as far west as Pittsfield. There's also been talk of building a passenger station in Palmer if this line comes to be. Do you support using state funding for an east-west rail link, and if so, what needs to be done to make that happen?
I have been a fierce supporter of that. I was very happy to work, especially with Senator Eric Lesser. We attended the meetings when the rail plan was being developed to make sure that Western Mass had a say in that. You know, right now, if you were to go to Palmer, and I don't know if I'm going to give a little plug for the Steaming Tender restaurant. But you can go to the Steaming Tender restaurant, and you're going to see trains go by all day long. But you know what they don't do? They don't stop, and it's ridiculous. We have lines and ready to go. I was very glad to see that we're going to get some funding. The governor has made that commitment that there will be funding to look at east-west rail, either a traditional rail, meaning going about the same speed as a vehicle would go, but also looking at high-speed rail. Extremely important. Our area of the state cannot be left behind. Back in the 1960s, there were 5 or 6 trains a day, commuter trains going from Springfield to Boston, and going right through Palmer needs to happen again.
Steve, do you support an east-west rail link, and how does that make that happen?
I do, as long as there is a return on investment. I think we've got to be careful about how we spend taxpayer dollars. And so you look at some of the concerns I have is right now, just to study the rail is costing us, or the feasibility is costing us $1 million to do that. Yet we have the trains running, we have stations, as Senator Gobi said, we have a stop in Palmer as well at Steaming Tenders, but yet we're spending $1 million to study. I think we've got to think about, we need somebody who can think about reeling these numbers in. These dollar figures are crazy. We've got to think about every dollar we spend for these taxpayers. There are people struggling right now, and we've got to make sure that we're spending their taxpayer dollars wisely. But we also have to bring jobs out to Western Massachusetts, and certainly if the rail will bring jobs out there, I think it's a great idea.
There are many farms in the Worcester, Hampden, Hampshire, and Middlesex district that have been struggling. Farms have been struggling across the country. What can the state do in order to boost local agriculture?
What I hear from farmers is certainly what a number of them are looking at is solar. That there are certain areas of their farms that aren't good for growing crops. So a lot of them have been asking for making it easier to put up solar farms, not where they're growing the crops, but on the other areas of the farms where they can subsidize the growing and their funds. And I think that's what we really need to do is make it easier for them to either wind farms or solar, anything we can do to help subsidize them, because we absolutely need the farms in our district. We absolutely need farms in our country, and we can't let that disappear. And that's my biggest concern, is making sure that we have them available for future generations.
Senator Gobi, what about farms, and what can the state do to help that help
Absolutely. For the past several years, I've been the chair of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Committee, and I work, when I tell you daily with farmers, I work daily with farmers. Big part of it is diversification. We have farms right now that are going into different things. I'll give you an example. We have about 110 dairy farms left in Massachusetts. That's a very small number of farms, and it's expensive. If you go and you want to get a pint of milk, the farmer is maybe making 7 cents on a pint of milk, and a lot of that has to do with a very convoluted system that's set at the federal level on dairy pricing. So we have farmers that are diversifying. A good example is at Stone Cow Brewery in Barry, where they've gone to producing beer. When I asked Molly, I said, why are you doing beer and not try to maybe do a little bit more milk? And she said, Ann, 7 cents for a pint of beer, $7 for a pint, $7 for a pint of beer, 7 cents for a pint of milk. So there's a lot that we can do and continue to do to help farmers and to get them to diversify their products, and also to create more local areas for them to be able to sell those products.
Here comes a topic that we seem like we talked about every newscast for like days and days on end, but the state plan to breed timber rattlesnakes on the Quabbin Reservoir has been suspended after a lot of controversy. Do you think that the plan was a good idea, and do you think that state wildlife officials should be continuing to look for places to breed these endangered snakes?
It was a extremely ill-conceived idea, which was another reason why that I formed a committee working with Fisheries and Wildlife, and we took that committee around the state to have hearings. It was very ill-conceived. It wasn't about, in my view, we have rattlesnakes in Massachusetts. They are being preserved. We've done head starting. Let's take a look at the 5 places that rattlesnakes currently exist, make sure that we are doing what we can to protect them there and not start a brand new colony, especially at the Quabbin Reservoir. So no, it was a very ill-conceived idea. I was very happy that Fisheries and Wildlife, that they backed off with that and are looking again to look at where the rattlesnakes currently exist and put our resources there.
Steve Hall, what about snakes on the Quabbin?
I don't think we should be focusing on snakes in the Quabbin. I know a lot of hunters, we certainly rely on hunting out here. We need it for the tick population, where we need to keep that down. And no, rattlesnakes on the Quabbin is not a great idea. But the problem is we're focusing on the wrong things. We have people who are struggling financially, yet we're worrying about rattlesnakes in the Quabbin. We have people, we have schools that are failing. We have hospitals and nursing homes that are really struggling right now. And yet we seem to be focusing on the wrong things. I think we need to get back to the really important things that are important to the people of the Commonwealth and of the district, and that's really about reeling in some of the taxes we have and making sure that we're spending our money wisely. There are certainly a lot of folks that are struggling right now.
Okay, it's time for a short break, and we'll be right back with more questions for the candidates running for the Worcester, Hampden, Hampshire, and Middlesex Senate District. You're watching a special Your Election Headquarters presentation right here on 22 News. Welcome back to a special Your Election Headquarters presentation right here on 22 News, and today we're hosting a debate with the candidates for the Worcester, Hampden, Hampshire, and Middlesex Senate District. We'll continue with our questions for the candidates, and Steve Hall, you get the next question. Massachusetts voters decided to legalize recreational marijuana in 2016's referendum vote, but the rollout of legal pot shops has been very slow. Do you think that the process for getting marijuana retailers up and running has been handled properly?
Great question. I think we have to be very careful about how we roll this out. It's certainly it's an important subject. I think it's a great idea to have the pot shops. If the voters wanted it, we've got to allow it, but we've got to be very careful about how we roll it out. So certainly we could have sped it up some, but we want to make sure that we're doing this right. This is also going to be a good source of tax revenue. I think hopefully it brings some tax relief to some of our citizens out there. And I would be looking to cut taxes as we get more and more taxes from the marijuana. I'd like to see other taxes cut so we can get some relief to our citizens out there. So yeah, I think let's take it careful and do this right.
Senator Gobi, how about marijuana?
Well, how about marijuana? That's a way to start a conversation, Rich. You know, it's very interesting. I know that some of the businesses wish it was a lot quicker, but you know, keep this in mind. This was brand new for Massachusetts. We did not have a playbook to go by. And so I do think that the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, took the right approach, that they had to look at everything. The few states that do have legalization to see what they were doing, what worked, what didn't work. And then, you know, we have to work with our public safety folks and figure out what's best, how it's going to work within communities. So I understand that people get frustrated. They think it's taken too long, but you know, you do have to get these things right, because once it's in place, it's here, and it's here to stay.
Massachusetts has some of the most strict gun laws in the country. Overall, do you support the state's approach to gun control, and what, if any, changes do you think that state lawmakers should make?
Well, and that comes up quite a bit, obviously, Rich. I've had a very strong Second amendment record for years and years and years. I've been listed as an A by both the NRA and by Gun Owners Action League. This year my rating went to a B because I did support ERPO. You know, when we look at laws in Massachusetts, we have to make sure that we're doing things that make sense. We want to make sure that we're getting the guns out of the hands of people that should not have them, but do not go after those who legally possess weapons and guns, whatever it might be, and don't go after those folks. And that tends to be where we have some issues, trying to figure out to make sure that we're protecting those who need the protection and going after those who should be off the streets.
Steve Hall, do you think the state should change the gun laws, or should there be changes made to the existing laws?
I think certainly the problem with guns is not the legal gun owners. And I think going after, for example, I disagree with Senator Gobi's approach with the red flag bill or the ERPO. We had protections in place. I don't think we needed any more protections. It really comes down to the fact that we've got other issues that we need to be dealing with. We need to be dealing with mental illness. We need to be dealing with bullying in school. Those are really the major issues facing our country. It's not the guns that are the problem, and certainly not the legal gun owners. I also support reciprocity across the states. I can see where we've got driver's licenses where they're valid across the country. I think we ought to have gun licenses that are valid across the country as well.
The state police have been in the news a lot, under scrutiny due to an overtime scandal. What do you think of the changes that are being made at the department, and do you approve of the leadership of Colonel Kerry Gilpin and Public Safety Secretary Daniel Bennett?
Certainly, the scandal is troubling. I mean, it really comes down to if there's this much abuse in our system going on. And well, let me back up first of all and say that there are 2,500 state police officers. This is just a small handful, and I fully support them. But it's really troubling that there are these folks who think that they can get away with what they get away with. And if there's this much abuse with our law enforcement officers, what else is going on throughout the state? And I hear that there's a lot of waste going on throughout the state, and I think we've got to reel that in. So certainly, I'm glad that these folks are being held accountable. I think we have to reel all this in because our Commonwealth really, it depends on our police doing their job and making sure we're safe.
Senator?
I've met with the Colonel, with the Secretary. They're both doing a very good job considering what they are facing, especially the Colonel. I think she came in at a very difficult time, put in a very difficult position, and I do like some of the things that are happening now, including trying to bring someone that's outside of the state police culture, if you will, and bringing in an outside person to look at how it is run, to go through all of the books, and I think that is needed. I think that second pair of eyes of someone that is outside of the state police is a good thing, and I applaud the Colonel, and I give credit to Governor Baker. I give credit when credit is due, and I give credit in this particular case.
There was a report that was released last month by S&P Global Ratings that found that Massachusetts doesn't have enough in reserves to be able to cope with a possible recession. Do you think that Massachusetts needs to do more to build up its reserves, and if so, how should we do that?
Well, another great question, Rich, and as of a week ago Monday when we came out with the supplemental budget, more money was put into that rainy day fund, and yes, you absolutely have to have that fund built up because you need to maintain those credit ratings. If you don't maintain the credit ratings, then you can't get things for the state. And so it's an absolute necessity. And I was very glad to see that that was done with the extra revenues that we see coming into the state. In addition to making sure that the rainy day fund is built up, we also need to keep some of those promises, such as making sure that we're 100% funding of regional school transportation. So I would like to see to make sure that those revenues are being used for those purposes.
Steve Hall, how do we build up those reserves?
Well, certainly we've got to have a senator that supports the governor. Over the past 2 years, Senator Gobi has opposed pretty much all of Governor Baker's spending cuts. We're talking well over 150 spending cuts. And she's opposed every single one of them. So certainly someone who supports the governor, somebody works with the governor to help reel in some of the issues we have there and some of the spending. I think that's how we're going to get to a better position. We're ranked now 47th in the country as far as our financial situation here in Massachusetts. That's appalling. We're Massachusetts. We've got to be better than that. And it's really about making sure that we have somebody who works with the governor, someone with a business background like the governor, make sure that we're running the state like a business.
Let's talk distracted driving now. Of course, Massachusetts bans texting while driving, but several states, including Connecticut, have gone further by passing laws prohibiting the use of any handheld devices while driving. Would you support the passage of a similar law here in Massachusetts?
I think anything we can do to make our highways safer is really important. I'm a motorcycle rider, for example, and I think certainly one of the major concerns amongst motorcycle riders is distracted driving. So, yeah, I'm not one to throw laws at something unless we really need it. But I think in this case, we want to at least do what we do. We do have laws on the books about distracted driving. I think we need to make sure we're enforcing those and make sure our roads are safe for our children. I'm somebody who lost a daughter in a motorcycle accident. So certainly it's number one on my radar as far as let's making the roads safe. We don't want to see any other families having to go through what we went through.
Our condolences to you and your family. How do you feel about that, the similar laws in Connecticut here and also in Massachusetts?
Distracted driving is absolutely a major problem. As I mentioned, I do a lot of driving, and when I'm sitting in traffic and I look over to the side and you'll see people texting. I talk to our local police officers, I talk to our troopers. They see it all the time. We absolutely have to change the law on that. And I know I have a couple seconds, I did just want to go back for a minute. I know that Steve mentioned about not supporting the governor. When it comes to veto overrides, when there are things for the district, you bet I am going to make sure that we override, whether it's money for the Quabog Valley CDC that helps to fund the Education to Employment Center in Ware, whether it's for our public parks, our state parks, for Howe State Park in Spencer, to Moore State Park in Paxton, you bet. I will absolutely continue to override, and that's what a state senator is supposed to do, to be there to work for their district.
It's time now for closing statements. Each candidate will now have 1 minute to make a closing statement. By virtue of the coin toss, Stephen Hall, you go first.
Well, thank you again for this opportunity. I've been campaigning here for 18 months, and I felt I had to jump in not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I couldn't stand by anymore. We have a healthcare system that is failing. We have doctors and nurses who are leaving the industry, and we have healthcare facilities that are closing at an alarming rate. We have schools and teachers who are dealing with regulations and dealing with unfunded mandates, and towns that are struggling to keep up financially with expenses. We have citizens who are trying to hang on to their homes, especially those in a fixed income, and they're having trouble because of high costs. All this while we're spending $1.8 billion per year in Massachusetts for illegal immigrants in Massachusetts. There is a solution, but we need new, fresh set of eyes to take care of it. I will always have your best interest in mind. I will speak up for you. I will oppose any new taxes, and I will oppose making Massachusetts a sanctuary state if you would elect me as your senator on November 6th.
Senator Gobi, your closing statement, please.
Well, thank you. You know, there is an awful lot of good things going on in this district, and I'm very proud to have been a part of that and working with our local officials, working with local community organizations, because that's what it's about. It's making sure that people's voices are heard and that we work on things, that we work on initiatives. Give you an example. We know that in many of the towns in this area, being faced with that, with crumbling foundations. It's a major issue for this area. I saw that. I worked with the Connecticut government, and we have some funding that's going to go in for the first time, a brand new line item in the budget, extremely important. Those are the kind of things that I work on to make a difference in the lives of people and I ask for your vote to be able to continue to do that. This is a great place to live, and we can make it even better.
That's all the time we have for today's debate. Thank you to both Senator Anne Gobi and Stephen Hall for joining us today and participating in today's debate. If you missed any of it, it'll be posted in its entirety on our website at wwlp.com. Tomorrow, we continue our series of debates with the candidates running in the 1st Hampden House District. And a reminder that Election Day is Tuesday, November 6th, but early voting is going on right now. I'm Rich Teddemer. Have a good afternoon.